conclusion of the case, the trial against Lori Vallow. Of course, Vallow found guilty on all 6 counts of murdering her children, both Tylee Ryan and JJ Vallow, also guilty on conspiring to murder her husband, Chad Daybell's first wife, and also grand theft. Now, the prosecutors certainly making their case, at least the jury found the prosecutors made their case against Lori pretty clearly, and they really focused on Lori, saying that it was Lori who manipulated Chad. It was Lori who drove this murder plot. The prosecution also saying that making sure that the jurors understood that religion wasn't the driver of these deaths and these killings. They were saying the case was really about money, it was about sex, and it was about power. And so guilty on all 6 counts against Lori Vallow. This trial just starting last month, too.
They broke it all down into 6 different counts and they split it up. So it was conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft in Tylee, guilty. First-degree murder of Tylee, guilty. Conspiracy to commit murder and grand theft for JJ. First-degree murder for JJ. Conspiracy, first-degree murder for Tammy, and grand theft, both of those counts guilty as well. So now she is facing life in prison in the sentencing hearing that is upcoming.
And those 12 jurors deliberating for about 7 hours total. That was it for them to reach their verdict today.
All right, let's look back a bit. We're waiting. Our Justin Lum is in the courtroom, and he's going to make his way down and talk with us live here in a short time. So let's take a look outside if we can, and what's going on outside the courtroom. Do we have that live picture available for us? There are a lot of testimony and evidence presented in this case. So here's the look outside the Ada County Courthouse. And it's tough to see if anybody from that courtroom is making this way out. We have a live camera there. And again, our Justin Lum is coming down the stairs here momentarily, and we will chat with him about this. But a lot of media outside, anybody involved in the case. You heard the judge say that. While the jurors sit on the case, they're admonished from talking to anybody, obviously, about the case, reading anything about the case, seeing anything about the case, but now all those admonitions are gone.
Yeah, and the jurors weren't sequestered last night either, but we can see the media that's going to be exiting anyways from the courtroom after that verdict was read. Of course, Justin making his way out to the area. We'll get to him as soon as we can, but we want to bring in a private investigator on this case that is joining us now live on the phone.
So Rich Robertson runs a detective agency here, private investigation agency, and he was actually hired by the grandparents of these 2 children after they disappeared. Rich, thank you for talking with us today. So guilty on all 6 counts. Is this a surprise to you?
Not at all. Yeah, it was a pretty powerful, overwhelming case. The evidence was presented in a methodical way, and it was there was no alternate theory as to how any of this could have happened. So the verdict doesn't surprise me a bit.
So you told us earlier, you were on our morning show, I guess it was a couple of weeks ago, or maybe longer. Right. We talked about this. When you first got that phone call from the grandparents, take us through if you can. You said as you continued to investigate, you kept finding people who were losing their lives.
Yeah, we got onto this early in the case, and it was in 2019, and things were still a little up in the air, and there had already been a couple of deaths associated with it, and as the case progressed, just more and more bodies kept piling up, which is just a horrifying thing. And even one of the main protagonists, the guy who is suspected of being the actual killer in all this, Lori Vallow's brother, Alex Cox, he was one of the victims. He died presumably of natural causes right here in the valley right after all this happened.
Rich, tell us about the grandparents a little bit. They've been working with you for an awfully long time. This case, of course, stretching out for years. It was July, 2019, that they were looking for their grandchildren. How are they doing?
It's been a tough slog for them. They have, you can imagine the emotions of seeing photographs of your grandchildren on the autopsy table or being unearthed. In the case of one of them was dismembered and burned, and those were images that were shown to the jury. The grandparents avoided the court that day, but the impact of that kind of testimony and those kinds of images I have haunted them from day one, and I'm sure that this trial isn't going to help that. It's always going to haunt them, even though they are outwardly celebrating this verdict. It's still a lifelong nightmare that they have to endure.
Rich, I'm sure in your line of work, you come up against the best and the worst in people. Can you get into Lori Vallow's mind? What do you think would motivate somebody like this? Do you agree with the prosecution's theory that it was sex and money and power and religion?
You know, this is one of those cases where we're trying to come up with some kind of rational explanation for these irrational acts. I'm sure that all of those things, sex, power, money, was all part of it. And so was kind of this misguided, mentally ill belief that they've gone off on the deep end. This was not a religion. This seemed to be a lot of, spiraled down into some mental illness, and yet she knew what she was doing. She deliberately lied. She deliberately directed. She made affirmative steps that she knew was intended to hide something. So even though she was delusional, she certainly knew what she was doing and the way she was acting.
All right, Rich Robertson, thank you so much for all your work on this. Let's look forward to, is Justin ready?
I believe so. Okay,
all right, Rich, we're going to let you go again. Thank you for talking with us. Maybe we can have you on the show again sometime.
Yeah, good luck.
Oh,
Thanks.
It's not too quiet. Okay, Rich, thanks for talking with us.
We do have a statement from Madison County and the prosecutor's office that we can give that to you now. If we want to take those live images outside the courtroom as we wait for Justin to be available, we can tell you exactly what the prosecutors have said. And they say that we are very pleased with the jury's verdict, and we want to thank them as well as the alternates for their service over the last 6 weeks during this trial. Given the pending case against the co-defendant, we are unable to conduct any additional interviews or discuss further details of this matter. We want to assure each of you that we remain committed to pursuing justice for Tylee Ryan, JJ Vallow, and Tammy Daybell. We also want to express sincere appreciation to the many members of law enforcement and the community who tirelessly worked together to hold Lori Vallow Daybell accountable. So that was signed Madison County Prosecutor Rob Wood and also Fremont County Prosecutor Lindsay Blake. So we will not be hearing from them additionally after this trial.
No, but they laid out a good case and they had some compelling evidence. I mean, the fact that the kids were missing, there was an all-out search for the children, and Lori and Chad were in Hawaii getting married, which I'm sure caused those jurors to think, well, if my children were missing, would I leave basically the mainland United States to go to Hawaii and have a marriage? Her sister-in-law, I believe it was, called her out on that, saying you were dancing on the beach when your children were dead in a shallow grave. The other really compelling piece of evidence is even after the children were missing and after Tylee was dead, she continued to cash her Social Security checks that were part of that as well, which is more compelling evidence that was laid out.
And the prosecution really making the case that Lori was after the money, that was a primary motivator for her, and that was a motivator potentially in the death of her previous husband as well. Of course, that is not part of this current trial that we're looking at. But the timeline on this is fascinating. You mentioned, Lori was arrested in Hawaii. The video exists out there, kind of that you're talking about when she was served papers, and it's her and Chad sitting by the pool. So certainly the jurors were moved by the idea that she was poolside when her kids were missing and people were looking for them. And that was back in, February of 2020 when she was finally arrested in Hawaii.
All right, let's get to Fox 10 investigative reporter Justin Lum. You have been following this case since the very, very beginning. You've been in that courtroom. Tell us about what you witnessed as the verdict was read, Justin.
Troy, Renee, we just got out of the courtroom right now. You could hear a pin drop as the verdict was being read by the court clerk. Guilty on all counts, Lori Vallow, murder charges in connection to the deaths of her children, JJ Vallow, Tylee Ryan, and Tammy Daybell, the first wife of her husband, Chad Daybell. Now, as we were leaving the courtroom, you could see the emotion flowing out of JJ Vallow's grandparents, Kay and Larry Woodcock. They were hugging the prosecutors. Law enforcement officials were hugging each other. I mean, again, you could feel the tension and anxiety as we waited on Lori Vallow to walk into the courtroom. But the culmination of thousands of hours of this law enforcement investigation between multiple agencies all coming to a head today. Lori Vallow did not show any emotion. She walked out smoothly, looked serious, a bit smug, I can say, did not really smile at all, just stared at the jury, heard the verdict, and she is now being transferred back to Fremont County.
Justin, you said she showed little emotion. Was that the case also when the defense wrapped up yesterday?
This was a bit different. Okay, this was a more of a serious, quiet emotion. Yesterday, she was visibly upset. We saw her wipe away tears after the lunch break before the state gave its rebuttal. Basically, the closing arguments by her defense painted her as a victim and someone who was duped by Chad Daybell, her husband, the doomsday fictional author, his religious beliefs, or their alleged religious beliefs that she bought into, and this inner circle she was a part of. She was painted as a follower, not a leader, not a warrior, a religious warrior, as she has said she was in her podcast and other statements made. So she was not happy about that, from the sources telling me how it came off. Basically, she did not want to look like she was a stupid person who let her children die. And that kind of smoothed over after some hours, and then today a little bit of a different emotion than yesterday.
So now we have to look ahead to Chad Daybell, and I would assume that, do we have a schedule for that trial yet, Justin?
We don't have an exact date, Troy, for Chad Daybell, but I know prosecutors and the defense we're looking at somewhere around June 2024. Definitely a delay. He is facing the death penalty. There is going to be probably a lot more evidence, but you got a bit of a preview of Chad Daybell's trial in this trial, with all the evidence in his backyard, the same law enforcement agencies, the FBI, Rexburg Police, and maybe even Chandler Police, Arizona law enforcement agencies, with all the text messages between Chad and Lori. And we got another preview from the defense here, pinning the crimes on Chad, as I just said, saying that Lori fell victim to him. So is there a possibility still in the works that a plea deal could happen? There is a lot of time yet to be determined.
Justin, let's go back to the prosecution a little bit, because the defense, they called no witnesses on Lori's behalf at all. But the prosecution, 60 witnesses they called, and a lot of that testimony very, very difficult to listen to.
Yeah, you really had a variety of evidence, from the cell phone data linking Lori Vallow's brother, late brother Alex Cox, to the backyard, the DNA evidence where law enforcement found her hair stuck to a piece of duct tape on JJ Vallow. His body was found wrapped in plastic and he was asphyxiated. And then you had the text messages and how she never ever reported her kids missing, and specifically text messages of her saying that her kids had become dark. People around her that were basically her enemies, family members, were dark spirits. There was no remorse and there was no concern for her kids' safety, and obviously she never reported them dead and continued to collect Social Security benefits months after the children had been murdered. So there was a lot of evidence there on the table. The prosecution really laid out a whole pathway, a roadmap, a timeline of events that really start in with the murder of her fourth husband, Charles Vallow. Obviously a different case set aside, separate from this case here in Idaho, but the prosecution said, hey, this is proves that there is a conspiracy motive and there is a pattern here with Lori Vallow.
Yeah, and so if you're just joining us, Lori Vallow was convicted, found guilty on all 6 counts against her, including 2 counts of first-degree murder and the murders of her own children. So if we can, Justin, I'd like to talk for a minute about these Arizona cases, about Charles Vallow, about her brother, Alex Cox, who allegedly may have taken part in some of these crimes. At what point can we expect Lori Vallow to face justice here?
Troy, that is a great question. I have already been in contact with the Maricopa County Attorney's Office. I've been waiting for a response on what happens next after this verdict has been read. What about extradition? How soon could we see an actual prosecution in that Charles Vallow murder? Remember, she was indicted in June of 2021 for conspiring to commit the murder of Charles Vallow. Prosecutors, or police, I should say, Chandler police believe that she and her late brother Alex Cox had a plan to shoot and kill Charles Vallow, and he was found dead in that Chandler home. And we know that Alex Cox took 45 minutes to call 911, and we know that Lori Vallow left the scene, went to a Walgreens and a Burger King and dropped her son JJ Vallow off at school. She was seen on the body camera footage laughing and smiling, and so police always had suspicions. But it was just a little too late as they fled to Rexburg, and then this whole sequence of terrible events happened. So how soon could we see a case, a trial here in Maricopa County? That is what we want to find out. Will they prosecute?
And Justin, we're still waiting for the sentencing phase in this case.
Yeah, in this case, that could take about 3 months. There are still some court administration type of procedures to be done, but the sentencing would take place, we believe, in Fremont County, where the alleged crimes happened, hence why she's being transferred back. This was the trial venue here in Ada County, and now it's time to take care of the sentencing phase back in Fremont County.
You know, we've been talking so much about court proceedings and charges and instructions and things like that, and I think sometimes lost in this is the fact that we lost a teenage girl and a young boy who had, you know, nothing coming to them, just the fact that they were part of this family that, you know, went sideways in the worst way you possibly can.
Yeah, Troy, that is exactly the point. The prosecution put it best. Let's start with 16-year-old Tylee Ryan. She had her whole life ahead of her. She was a young, vibrant woman. She had friends back in the Valley, where we're from, that truly cared about her. She cared deeply for her little brother, JJ Vallow, 7 years old, special needs. He had autism, and he was just the joy of his, not just his grandparents' hearts, but everyone around him. And so why did this happen to these innocent children? And don't forget the third victim.
Yeah, Tammy Daybell as well.
A mother of 5, a grandmother, you know, completely healthy, a librarian who was known to be so kind and so sweet, and she just suddenly dies in the night, and her husband does not call for an autopsy. And it really took digging that started in Arizona because the kids were missing and because Lori Vallow's ex-nephew-in-law had been shot at. And police say, Gilbert police say that was Alex Cox. So there's just a lot going on. At the end of the day, there are 3 innocent victims. We should be getting some reaction from, I'm going to step out of the way, from the family of JJ Vallow.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah, we are seeing the images of the family right now as
Photographer Louis Tortora has this.
Justin, can you point out who we're seeing here? And
Okay, yeah, right now you're seeing Larry Woodcock in the denim. That is JJ's grandfather. You're seeing Kay Woodcock. That is JJ's grandmother, Cresha, her daughter. And they are singing We Will Rock You. That is JJ's favorite song, one of his favorite songs. Larry was playing that in the halls yesterday, and he's been optimistic all through this.
Can you imagine being a grandparent and loving your grandchild so much and going through something like this,
Yep,
Justin?
They're going to speak to us briefly, and I know they are just elated. They have been fighting for three years.
yeah, there's videos posted of him with his grandson, and you can just imagine if there's any relief in this case, maybe a little bit of relief on their part to see Lori be held responsible.
Yeah, here they are.
Shut your mic.
Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. Thank y'all. For one time in my life, I'm kind of lost at words, believe that or not. Look, first of all, I want to thank 18 jurors. I cannot thank them enough. I'm sure everybody has paid attention in court.
Speak it, get it here closer.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure everyone has paid attention in court. I want to personally thank and I want to personally hug every one of those jurors. What they went through, what they saw is mind-boggling. I hope that nobody ever has to go through this. I hope nobody ever has to see and hear the details of what happened to JJ, to Tylee, and to Tammy. Guys, we got 2 more trials. 2 more.
3. Charles, Chad, and Brandon.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
I mean,
well,
Charles
okay.
is in Arizona.
Yeah.
Brandon's in Arizona.
The next trial is Chad. I look forward to being back in this courthouse again if that happens. I hope everybody is here again. I hope that y'all appreciate so much the court system, how meticulous the prosecution was. I think everybody will agree it was amazing job by all of them. And I want y'all to know that even the defense, I shook their hands. I have said many times, I want a fair, honest, and righteous decision. I think we had 18 jurors that all deserve our appreciation, our love, and they gave an honest, fair, and righteous verdict.
You guys really embraced each other in there at the reading of the verdict. What did you say to each other in that moment?
I love you. What else can you say?
Larry, what was it like walking out, seeing all the law enforcement officers in the hallway?
Do what?
What was it like walking out, seeing all of the law enforcement officers who have spent countless hours in
Oh,
the hallway?
I know. We would be
And-
nowhere without them.
You know, as much as I have said up here about the prosecution, the defense, the jurors, Nate, you made an absolute great statement. We have to appreciate, support our law enforcement officials. Those guys sacrificed from their families, from their homes. We will never know the countless hours that they have put in, how much sacrifice they have gone through, and most of all, what they have seen in this case that maybe some people will never unsee. I love them. I appreciate them. There's not one of these guys.
All right,
I wouldn't
Larry
go
Woodcock,
in a dark
JJ
alley with.
and Tylee's grandfather here, who's been through so much, thanking the investigators, thanking the court system, and the verdict definitely went his way.
Yeah, and that is 6 counts against Lori Vallow, guilty on all counts. So that's what they found today. Lori Vallow, right here, you can see first-degree murder, also conspiracy to commit murder, first-degree murder of both of her children, and also conspiracy against Chad Daybell's previous wife, Tammy Daybell. So all 6 counts found guilty.
All right, our Justin Lum will stay there. He is continuing to gather news on this story. We'll have more, much more on this in later editions of Fox 10 News. We now send you back to our regular programming.